NFL script so early before everyone else here and have been right about so many things heading into the season. We also have the documents for the top 5 worst teams, the top 5 best teams, and then we will also go over the Wingstop lore with the Toronto Raptors. But we did have a New Year recently. We both went out for New Year's, able to link up a little bit that night. How was your New Year's experience out on the town?
It was a good time. We found love in a hopeless place, as Rihanna would say. But my biggest experience, and I feel like other people can relate to, Taco Bell on New Year's Eve at 2 a.m. is what Taco Bell's Super Bowl is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we go to Taco Bell at 2 a.m., right? It's me and the boys. We're all drunk. We're all hungry. We want some fast food, you know? We go in line, and there's a massive line. It's like a 20-minute wait. Probably not worth it, but it's Taco Bell. It's 2 a.m. We're drunk. Who cares? We all do our mobile orders. We figured, well, by the time we get to the drive-thru, we'll already have our orders in place. It'll be done. We'll pick it up. We'll leave. Genius.
You
right?
would think, right?
Genius.
Yeah.
We get to the drive-thru, and we have this weasel at the drive-thru. So we actually can only do one per car. One order per car.
What? One order per car? Like you go through the drive-thru and like
5 mobile orders. One per car.
And you ordered like an hour ahead? Like, were you like...
We were in line. We all did our mobile order. And we're like, all right, we'll just pick it up at the drive-thru, right? Genius. Yeah. Smart idea. We do that everywhere else, every other major establishment, as you do. Most efficient way. And then we get to the drive-thru, the weasel at the drive-thru. Dare I say it? He's like, we can only do one per car. I'm like, so you're telling me we have to go through the drive-thru 4 more times to get all of our food? He's like, that's correct. I'm like,
is this Daniel Jones or is it Brandon Staley? Like,
dude, this is like, I can't insert wimp. That's all I'm going to say.
Insert wimp.
Insert wimp. That's what it is. And so I begrudgingly, I wasn't driving, but our friend begrudgingly, we grab our Taco Bell. We give it to the least hungry friend, L on our part. We go back through the drive-thru. We wait another 15 minutes after our orders at this point have been in there for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, you know what? 2024, Brick Jameson, you guys think of me as a gentleman. You guys think of me as an honorable, you know.
A man of love.
Somebody that you would bring home to your daughter. Or bring home to your parents, I mean. Yeah. Or maybe your daughter.
Maybe your parents bring you home to their daughter.
Maybe they do.
You never know.
Maybe they set me up. But at this point, 2024, there's a new era in town, and it's going to be the villain era. And so we get in line again, and we do the same thing. He's like, how may I take your order? I'm like, we need an order for me, my boy, and my other boy. We need all of our Taco Bell now. And it's just like, well, sir, we can only do. I'm like, yes, I know your system, and your system fucking sucks. Whoever came up with it, it was not corporate. It was just the 3 brain cells combined between you and your other coworker here. Give us our Taco Bell, and we'll leave. Why are we going to go through the Taco Bell order 3 more times when it's the busiest of the entire year? Made no sense. It'd be like if you were at a grocery store and you can only get your dairy, and then you have to go through the checkout line again to get your meat, and then go through it again to get everything else. I'm like, who does that benefit? Doesn't benefit me. Doesn't benefit you.
Yeah, it's like when you watch. It's like when you watch Revenge of the Sith. Have you seen like those like breakdowns of how like ridiculous the assassin scene is and how many like chances he actually had to kill Padme? And then he's just like, oh, you had so many times and chances to actually get this done, but you chose the most convoluted way that makes the least sense, but it's just convenient for the plot. Like that rule doesn't even make sense because I feel like I've had a DoorDasher before and they were like, yeah, I got to the line and then I picked up your DoorDash and then they told me I have to go around and wait in line because I had 2 Dasher orders and they're not ready yet, so you have to go around because you can only do 1 per order. That's
so the
ridiculous.
First time we went to the drive-thru, right, he's like, well, we have to do it to make sure that your food gets charged. I'm like, what? I've already been charged, so that's bullshit.
All 5 of you.
Yeah, so when we get back the second time, I'm like, we've already been charged. We already have our orders. They've been in there for 30 minutes. You're going to give us our orders now, basically. I'm like, I'm tired of this. This is stupid. The manager comes on. Oh, there's only 2 of us here, so it's really busy. I'm like, I don't care.
We ordered before everyone in line.
I'm like, this is New Year's. Why am I going to go back in line? This is a stupid system. I'm like, to be honest, ma'am, this is the worst system I've ever seen at a fast food establishment. This company makes billions of dollars, and this is their system.
Yeah.
Who does it benefit? You go through the drive-thru, You're still busy, just as busy before, but instead you have people who have been there for hours at this point. We were at Taco Bell for 1 hour, which is ridiculous.
An hour? What time did you get there?
We got there at 2. We left at 3.
Jesus Christ.
And was it worth it? Kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
It's kind of worth it.
Yeah, it's kind of worth
But
it.
fuck Taco Bell and fuck the mobile orders. But on to a new year, on to the villain era of Brick Jameson, on to the top 5 and bottom 5 themes, things that will carry over from 23 to 24.
Yeah.
Top 5 and bottom 5 teams.
Is Taco Bell's top 5, are they on the worst list this week or an honorable mention for
They
Taco
are
Bell's
an honorable
mobile
mention.
order?
They're an honorable mention because, I have a lot of teams to go over, and they need to be at least harassed a little bit because of the inadequacy of that team. Now, let's go over the top 5 worst teams according to the Brickyard. As you know, we have the documents, as we always do, ahead of schedule, most accurate, most confidential, most certified documents, and they are getting unsealed right now. But as much as I am a villain now in 2024, I do also have a soft spot. I do. I really do. So here are some teams that will be spared, whether because I just don't really feel like talking about them anymore because of how bad they are, or maybe they just, they deserve to be spared for one reason or another. The Patriots. The Patriots, they lost against the Bills, but they put up a fight.
Yeah.
Jalen Reagor returned touchdown. Good for him. Patriots, you're spared. You nearly beat the Bills. Congrats to you.
Respectable.
The Chargers, I'm tired of talking about you. I really am. Like, you lost to Jared Stidham. I should probably bully you, but I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired of them at this point. They're so bad that I don't even want to talk about how bad they are anymore. It's not even fun for me anymore.
Yeah, let them disappear into the ether.
The Commanders. The Commanders, you've lost 7 straight games. You guys are an embarrassment, but you lost to the 49ers. I don't care anymore. You suck. Sam Howell sucks. You suck. If you're lucky, you'll get Jaden Daniels. If you're not lucky, you'll get Drake May. I don't care. And then one team who could be on this list because of how bad they've been the last month, but because of their contributions to 2023, I feel like I cannot put them here. That's the Minnesota Vikings. What did the Minnesota Vikings do? Well, they did what the Texas Rangers did, and they brought to us the sweet Caroline of our generation, and that is the Creed hire. Creed, they were in the ether. They were the butt of every joke for the last 20 years. And then we were at a sports bar on Saturday,
Yeah.
and Hire came on by Creed. You've all heard it now at this point because the Rangers played it for their World Series run, and the Vikings played it on their 5-game winning streak earlier this year. And I thought to myself, I was so used to hearing Sweet Caroline all this time. And now we're going to start hearing Hire at every single sports bar for the next 30 years. So
It's honestly an improvement in my book.
yes, I really will take it because Sweet Caroline's a fucking obnoxious song, and that's coming from a Red Sox fan. So the Vikings have to be spared because of their contributions to 2023. But we turn a new leaf, and there is a new top 5 worst teams according to the Brickyard. How about at number 5? They are back. Dare I say it, like a bad rash. That is the New Jersey Boogers, a.k.a. the New Jersey Jets, a.k.a. the New York Jets. You got cooked by a guy who was begging to be on your team. Let's remember what I just said. The New York Jets. There was a guy begging to play for you, Joe Flacco. He goes there on Thursday Night Football, and he fries you on live television. And he was saying, I was really waiting on that phone call. I wanted to replace Aaron Rodgers. And they said, nope. Zach Wilson, nope. Trevor Siemian, nope. We don't want you. Good riddance. Well, how did that go for you? You guys are now 5-10. You guys might be worse than the Patriots after next week and finish last in your division. Congratulations, New York. You somehow, the only person in the history of the NFL who chose and begged to play for you, you said no to. And now you guys are the bottom barrel of the NFL. So congratulations. You guys embarrassed yourselves again. Now at number 4, this is a team that will be in the playoffs, but they will probably not be in the playoffs for very long because they have lost 4 of the last 5 games, which included getting embarrassed by the 49ers, included getting embarrassed by the Cowboys, and then you embarrassed yourself against the lowly Cardinals. The Cardinals who have been on this list many times. That's right, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles. What happened? You guys were 11-1. You guys were almost guaranteed the first seed in the NFC playoffs. You were going to have home field advantage. You were potentially the favorites to make it back to the Super Bowl, which hasn't happened in a very long time, since the Seahawks of the 2010s. But instead, The Cowboys cook you. The 49ers cook you. And the lowly Birds of Arizona cook you. And then you barely beat the Giants. Now, here we are now. You guys are going to be the 5th seed. You're going to face the Bucks or the Saints or maybe the Falcons. And I don't really believe you to beat any of them because for some reason, A.J. Brown has disappeared. For some reason, your secondary doesn't exist. Don't know where they went. And then Jalen Hurts, he's got a little bit of Josh Allen in him. He loves throwing it to the other team. He loves turnovers. Maybe he's a big fan of Thanksgiving. I'm not sure. But the Eagles are the 4th worst team according to the Brickyard.
Wow.
Number 3, we get a little bit more bronze. We get a little bit more brunt because this next team, the Denver Broncos, why are they here? Because they do not run like an NFL team. They run like this jacket, like a mob boss, doing this to Russell Wilson, benching him, saying, if you don't give us our gabagool, get lost, pal. So the Broncos, the way they run their business, absolutely disgraceful. Well documented on our last episode. And the just pure embarrassment of a legend in this game, Russell Wilson. Can't talk about the 2010s without him. What you're doing is a disgrace, and therefore you are the 3rd worst team according to the Brickyard. Number 2, I was going to sit here and I was going to rip on the 2-14 Panthers because of just how bad they are. Bryce Young, he's hating his life. He's listening to a lot of emo music. I'm sure there's some Juice WRLD in that catalog. There might be some XXX Tentacion. Who knows?
Maybe even Creed.
He might even listen to Creed. He might cry to Creed like the rest of us. And as much as I want to bully the Panthers or the Carolina Kitty Cats, well known on this show, I feel like I need to bully the management because, first of all, you traded your number 1 receiver for Bryce Young. How did that work out for you? Your number 1's Adam Thielen. But even higher up, even past the general manager, even past the head coach, who's now no longer with us, the owner, David Tepper, threw a beer at a Jaguars fan. Dude, you're a billionaire. You've already won the game of life. Why are they getting under your skin? You're literally in a suite where maybe 100 people can be in at all times. You own an NFL franchise, which is only 32 people in this world that can say, and you're upset about a greasy fan from Duval County? Dude, you really should be number 1 on this list, but you're about to get suspended and you're about to get heavily fined. I'm sure that's really going to affect your $1 billion bank account, but pathetic. How does this affect you? How are you emotionally upset about this? It's a greasy guy from Duval County. The Jaguars can't even sell out, no matter how good they are. And this is what upsets you?
Yeah.
Weak. Loser. Anyways, the number 1 team, the worst team in the NFL. And of course I have to put them here. I'm talking about the refs from the Cowboy and Lions game. Why are they here? Because you ruined the Lions season. You elevated the Cowboys. The Cowboys did not deserve to win that game. You called it for a legal man. They were not eligible. When there was clear evidence of them reporting to you, and you just are either blind, you're deaf, or maybe you're just a little, dare I say the word, retarded. I don't even care. At this point, the refs, you cost the Lions a chance at the 1 seed. You gave the Cowboys an opportunity to be the 2 seed, and the Cowboys don't deserve it. You did the same thing with the Seahawks game, where you gave them 250 penalty yards. Give me a break. The Cowboys are frauds. And now the Cowboys are going to have the 2 seed, and they're going to beat up on the lowly 7th seed, whoever it might be. And then the Lions don't deserve this. The Lions have been good at drafting. They've been consistent all year, and you just took a giant shit on their season for no reason. So therefore, the refs are the worst team according to the Brickyard.
Fantastic list. Yeah, I agree with most of those teams on the list. The Eagles came out a little bit out of nowhere for me on that list, I will admit. However, there is you're like, oh, who could have seen this coming? Well, it's like early on, I was like, this Eagles team is giving me kind of the same vibe of that Pittsburgh Steelers team earlier in the season once they started losing those games. So it's like, saw this coming a little bit. And then I was like, if Philadelphia drops to that 5th seed, you may see Tampa upset them. I don't know. So it's like, Philadelphia has been, where are you? Especially their corners. It's like, are you on vacation? Did you forget that the NFL season is still going? Are you on to the NBA season? Are you trying out for baseball right now? Like, what is happening right now?
What a disaster.
Yeah, but I'm tired of being negative, tired of talking about these bad teams. It's time for the top 5 best teams according to the Brickyard. We have the documents here, and they are about to be unsealed. And then few teams on this list I still can't bring myself to putting on. Kansas City Chiefs did win this week, but when you have 40 drops and you still have Kadarius Toney on your team, you are still ineligible to be on this list until Kadarius Toney is off this roster or traded away or fades away into oblivion. So they cannot be on this team. The Dallas Cowboys cannot be on this list because, first of all, you can't win on the road. And then also, the refs help you win your last game. So I can't even take anything from that win last week. So again, the Dallas Cowboys are left off of this list. And then the Miami Dolphins, you can't beat a winning team, and I put you on this list. I'm like, maybe if you are at least competitive with the Ravens, I can put you on this list. But no, you get 56 points dropped on your head. Any defense that has Jalen Ramsey and the legend of Van Ginkel on that defense should not get 56 points dropped on them. I don't care who you're playing. And then Lamar Jackson going for 5 touchdowns. And then also the Buffalo Bills. I can't wrap my arms around this team. Like, come on, it's the Buffalo Bills. So at number 5, I couldn't find a team that deserves to be at 5, but one of the crews and one of the teams that has the most impact on games and has the most impact on teams winning games is the refs. It's like the refs we saw in that Dallas Cowboys game, how much they can affect a victory. We've seen in plenty of Kansas City Chiefs games how they can swing it either way. And then everyone has been complaining about how bad the officiating is. So as far as top 5 teams, top 5 crews in the league that leads the outcome to victory, it has to be the refs. Pivoting off your top 5 worst teams this week as the refs. Well, at number 5, since they contribute to so many ineligible victories this year, since they contribute to so many Super Bowl victories, I'm going to put the refs at number 5 because they have been one of the most dominant and one of the most impactful units so far this NFL season. So at number 5, we have the refs. At number 4, we have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions got robbed in that game. I definitely think they should have won that game, and it was on the road versus the Dallas Cowboys. And you think about it, it's like you're in Dallas. This is a defense that has struggled over the last few weeks, and there's like, is this the same old Detroit Lions defense? Well, this week we're potentially getting back not only Aleem McNeil, which is one of the most dominant players on the defensive end. Who's that guy who led the league in turnovers? Oh yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson is coming back this week, so that'll be a huge impact for the Detroit Lions defense. And they went to Dallas, and the Dallas Cowboys have averaged 40 points at home. It has been an absolute track show in Jerry World, and the Detroit Lions were able to hold them down. They were able to hold them to a field goal to give Jared Goff another chance. And Jared Goff, even though he threw 2 turnovers, even though he just had an interception on the last drive, he led them down the field like a game manager does, like Cam Newton labeled him, and then he got them in position to win that game. And Jared Goff did win that game for the Detroit Lions, throwing it to Taylor Decker in the end zone, who did report as eligible, but the ref, who's at number 5 and a complete buffoon and was demoted from the playoffs, is completely out. And then you look at the Detroit Lions too. You're like, well, they drafted 2 of the offensive rookie of the year so far. We have a receiver. It's only happened a couple times where a receiver has had over 800 receiving yards, over 9 touchdowns, and over 80 receptions. We're looking at Odell Beckham Jr. in 2016. We're looking at Jamar Chase in 2021. And then we're looking at, rookie wide receiver Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. No, Sam Laporta at tight end. So not only do you get Jahmyr Gibbs, who has come absolutely on at the end of this season, you also have Sam Laporta now. So that's going to be a huge impact in the playoffs. Then you're getting 2 of the top players on your defense. So the Detroit Lions, they did get robbed, but it's only propane for the fire and the chip that's already on their shoulder, as Dan Campbell said. So at number 4, we have the Detroit Lions. But at number 3, still have the San Francisco 49ers. Technically, they still have the best roster in the NFL, top to bottom. And then the only reason why they're not number 2 or number 1 is because they can't beat teams from the Midwest so far this season, but you still have Joey Bosa, and then you have officially 2,000-yard receivers for the first time in multiple seasons with George Kittle, and then not Deebo Samuel. You have Brandon Ayuk there, who's making a great case to have a massive payday in the offseason or when he is a free agent here, so he's someone that definitely deserves his money. Then Brock Purdy bouncing back in Washington after the Baltimore Ravens, but the interesting thing with the Ravens loss is Lamar Jackson has only lost to an NFC team once in his career. Lamar Jackson is pretty much undefeated, and the only quarterback he lost to, oddly enough, is Daniel Jones, and he probably just wasn't taking that game too seriously.
Why would you?
Yeah, and that's why he slipped up there. But the only team he's ever lost to is the Giants, but San Francisco is still one of the most dominant teams in the NFL. They're better than the Cowboys. They're better than the Eagles. And until Detroit goes to San Francisco and beats them, they are the third best team in the league. At number 2, got the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is the MVP of this league at this point, and the reason he played the full season, and then the MVP debate has been 1 week it's Dak Prescott. It was never Dak Prescott. 1 week it's Brock Purdy. It was never Brock Purdy. A few weeks it's Myles Garrett. They're not going to give it to a defensive player. It's a quarterback-centric award, and then he saw how it was week to week, and as soon as they mentioned, well, is Lamar Jackson the MVP? He's like, okay, if you want to take this award home and no one really wants it, let me go out there and drop not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 touchdowns. And you're like, oh, well, Lamar Jackson, he must have rushed for 2 touchdowns and thrown for 3. No, he threw for all 5 of them, and you're seeing the evolution of Lamar Jackson, which is absolutely terrifying. You want to make a case for a comeback player of the year? How about Odell Beckham Jr. staying healthy all season? How about him getting his guys revved up? And then OBJ said himself, this is the best team I've ever played on from top to bottom. And how can you blame him when you have players like Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, and Kyle Hamilton, and then players all over your secondary like Marlon Humphrey? So this Baltimore Ravens team is geared up for a long run in the playoffs, and they are going to be that number 1 seed. So will they rest players? Will they not? All we know is they are the second best team according to the Brickyard. Now, why would you say are they not the best team according to the Brickyard? Because if this man played a full season, he would have thrown for damn near 6,000 yards, 55 touchdowns, and while he would have thrown for 30 interceptions, how could you not be the most valuable player in the league when you come into a Cleveland Browns situation and you're just absolutely on fire? He's undefeated so far with the Cleveland Browns, and Joe Flacco has led this team and brought them to an entirely nother level. While the Baltimore Ravens are dropping 56 points, the Browns are still dropping 37 on a legitimately good Jets defense. He's dropping 30 points on a legitimately good Texans defense in Houston. And then with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore coming back for the playoffs, they have one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. Their defense matches up top to bottom with Baltimore's defense. And what Joe Flacco does is he's been in a AFC conference championship a couple times. He's been to a Super Bowl and done it before. And the reason why the Cleveland Browns are the number 1 team in the league is because they are playing with house money. They don't have any pressure on them. And then they pretty much match up with Baltimore top to bottom. And they already beat Baltimore in Baltimore when they were down 24-10 with Deshaun Watson, not Joe Flacco. And I don't think Joe Flacco is going to be nervous at all to go into Baltimore if he has to match up against the Ravens. He's very comfortable in that stadium. It's going to be a primetime matchup. And then he's faced players like Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, and he's gone toe-to-toe with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger. So he is a guy that will rise to the occasion. So at number 1, we have the Cleveland Browns.
I love it. The 2 AFC North teams, one of these teams, I believe, will win the Super Bowl.
One of them, yeah, because if the Niners make it, they can't beat teams from the Midwest. Lamar Jackson does not lose to NFC teams. So if the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl and they somehow beat the Cleveland Browns and Joe Flacco, then Lamar Jackson in the Super Bowl, it's pretty much a lock, because if you see him versus NFC teams, that's when he performs the best out of anyone.
Yeah, so I think that I like that list. I think the refs at number 5. I mean, we got the refs on both the worst and the top 5 teams just because of how dominant they are on what feels to be both sides of the ball. So we like that list. And obviously,
you love him, you hate him.
Because we are the Brickyard and because we are the most accurate, most confidential, and most forward-thinking podcast in the NFL markets here, you know that what we're saying is the gospel.
Yeah, it is gospel. We pretty much called everything so far this NFL season. We were talking about weeks ago how the Philadelphia Eagles could be the Pittsburgh Steelers of that year. And then, oh yeah, they also faced off against Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. And I was talking about how the Detroit Lions and the LA Rams, if they matched up in the playoffs, would have so many storylines. The NFL sees that and they're like, oh, let's make sure that the Lions are the 3 seed so they can match up against the Rams in the first round. And then I'm like, you know what team gives the Cowboys a lot of trouble if they would ever face off, if the Cowboys could jump Philadelphia and get the 2 seed? I'm like, the Green Bay Packers, once they won on Sunday Night Football. I was like, imagine if they get the 7 seed and then you get to see Aaron Jones unleash hell in Jerry World again, like he's done in so many playoff games, and
Mm.
the Packers gaining momentum. And it seems like the Cowboys, they lost 2 straight games, and they it seems like they still had lost some momentum in that game versus the Detroit Lions,
Mm.
because while their defense is the most dominant unit on the field, when they're not getting turnovers at home, their offense really isn't that special at all.
No, I mean, it's really just CD Lamb. And if you can contain CD Lamb, which it's been a hard task to do, it's like outside of him, you're not really game planning for Brandon Cooks as much. Michael Gallup is an afterthought. Jake Ferguson, afterthought. And then Tony Pollard really hasn't been that number one that they've missed with Zeke. So it's like, it's really just if you can let CD Lamb get his and just avoid that big play, that big touchdown, you'll be fine. I mean,
Yeah.
outside of that one giant, 92-yard touchdown where the corner fell over, they only scored 13 points in that game.
Yeah, outside of that play, and then it was one-on-one coverage, which you're not going to see that often. And the Detroit Lions were also having a pretty easy time blowing up the run. Like their
Yeah.
run blitzes were pretty dynamic, and they were in the backfield. And it's like I've always been on the train that Tony Pollard is not a one on a Super Bowl team. I'm like, Tony Pollard is fine, but he's still in like that James Conner type of run game where James Conner is really, really good and he is a number 1 running back, but you would prefer him to be a 1-2 punch with another dynamic guy in your backfield. And then
Yeah.
Tony Pollard worked really well with Zeke, because as Tony Pollard was coming up, Ezekiel Elliott was kind of falling down, but they just didn't go out there and draft another guy good enough to complement him.
Mhm.
And it's not Tony Pollard's fault. It's just you are who you are. And is he going to be a top 10 running back? It's like, no, probably not. But is he top 15 perennially? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Like they went out, they drafted Deuce Vaughn. I think they kind of whiffed on Deuce Vaughn a little bit, and they just need like a big physical running back. And I think that they're a team that you should see target Derrick Henry when he comes available.
Mm.
But Tony Pollard, his contract's up. He's going to go somewhere else. Someone else is going to give him an opportunity, and I hope he strives on that opportunity. But I just don't think that when you're talking about a Cowboys offense that's so CD Lamb dependent, it's like you could lean on someone like Tony Pollard, but you really can't with them at this point.
Yeah, no, you really can't. He's not a guy who you can just be like, all right, here's 30 touches, go make something happen. And then you can't really play keep away with him, because my biggest problem with the Dallas Cowboys is if they have a lead, I'm not that confident that they're going to be able to keep it, because if you go 3 and out a couple times, which you can definitely make them. You can definitely make that happen. And the Jaguars did that last season. It's like they're not a team that can just play keep away the whole game.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. So I think like, do you think that with that weakness that they have, like if it's a team like the Packers, and we'll go over the how this breaks down the final playoff picture, but do you think like a team like the Packers can expose them? Do you think they're definitely vulnerable to that first round exit?
Yeah, I think with this NFL season, you'd be stupid not to say that, especially like this season has been the most glaring expect the unexpected, and especially with the Green Bay Packers, the Cowboys got destroyed by, oh, who's it? James Cook, not Dalvin Cook in his prime. James Cook, who has been a pretty inconsistent running back. He's had some good moments. You know who's a lot better than James Cook? Aaron Jones. And we saw Aaron
Yeah.
Jones last week. And with the Green Bay Packers, whenever they went there in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers, it was always just Aaron Jones cooking them up. And then the problem with that is no one's going to expect anything from the Packers. If the Packers go in there and put up a fight, people will be like, oh, that's nice. But they're not going to expect them to go into Dallas and beat them. This is the most pressure that the Dallas Cowboys have probably ever had to win or go home this year, especially once you jump the Philadelphia Eagles to get that home field game. And now your reward is playing the Green Bay Packers, who own you. Like, they pretty
Yeah.
much owned you, and then who do you trust more in big moments? Like, I will take Matt LaFleur over Mike McCarthy, and then Mike McCarthy versus his own team, does he try and get a little bit too cute because he wants to show them like, "Oh, yeah, you whiffed letting me go. Look at all these creative plays," and that could backfire, and if the Packers keep it close, it's like Dak Prescott is not a perfect quarterback and he's not like an elite guy. So it's like he's not above making silly mistakes either, but
Yeah.
neither is Jordan Love. So I think it's not going to be like a runaway victory for Dallas or just a lock that they're going to upset them.
I think if the Packers can play clean, and then really, it's going to be their defense that I would have to think about, because their offense is pretty efficient at this point. As long as Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over,
Yeah.
which in the last 6 weeks he really hasn't turned the ball over, then I think their offense will be fine. It's just whether or not their defense can contain the Cowboys. Because if it's at home and how they've been at home, I think that's my biggest concern with the Packers. But if they can contain them like the Lions did, who
Yeah.
have also had their issues on defense, then I think anything's possible.
Yeah. The thing with the Packers is they have a good offensive line. Their defense, as long it depends on what Jair Alexander we're gonna get. And that's
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. But like, can you contain CD Lamb enough, or do you just go, hey, we know CD's gonna get his, let's shut down everybody else? Because
Mm.
like Jake Ferguson, like in that Lions game, he gave me a little bit of this guy might disappear in the playoff vibes. And then
Yeah.
Brandon Cooks was the one who made that play, but like I'm not banking on Michael Gallup or Tony Pollard or Jake Ferguson to show up. It's just gonna be Dak, CD, or bust. Where the Packers, like I feel like they have a better run game than the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think so too, because they have someone to complement Aaron Jones. You have
Yeah,
an AJ Dillon, who's a more big physical running back,
yeah,
and then Tony Pollard. Like, who's that big physical guy next to him? Deuce Vaughn is like 4'11".
yeah.
Like, not actually, but he seems like it.
And what do they say about young teams? You don't know what you don't know. And you don't the Packers are the youngest team in the league. They don't know that they're not supposed to beat the Dallas Cowboys. They
Yeah,
don't know that yet. And then
yeah.
Jordan Love has seen Aaron Rodgers go into Jerry World and then absolutely toy with them.
hmm
So he knows it can be done. So it's an exciting matchup, and I hope we get to see it in the first round. But I think that'll be a pretty explosive matchup.
Yeah, I think so too. But I say we preview the final playoff picture, talk about the scenarios that we'll take down in week 18 as we talk about the final week of the regular season entering into Super Wildcard weekend next week.
Yeah, so gonna pull up the standings right here, right now. So the most important matchup, though, win or go home. Let's start matchup wise. On Saturday, we have the Houston Texans versus the Indianapolis Colts. Win or go home. We don't know. I believe that the winner would probably get the seventh seed,
Mhm.
unless the Bills fall out of it and the Steelers end up making it. But who do you like early on in that matchup? What's your when you think of Colts Texans, what does your gut tell you?
My gut's leaning Texans here because CJ Stroud coming back, I think he adds that extra boost for them. This is definitely going to be a very close game. I think this could come down to a field goal, but I'm leaning Texans here. I know that the NFL, if there is something with the refs where they are leaning for storylines, having someone like CJ Stroud in the playoffs will be more exciting for them than a Gardner Minshew. So I think right now my gut tells me Texans in like a 23-21 kind of game.
23-21. Yeah, I could see that because the Raiders gave the Colts a little bit of trouble where the Colts did have some explosive plays, but the way Antonio Pierce has been able to revive that defense and just the Raiders culture that they've really been missing for a long time. They haven't really had that defensive mentality coach
Mm,
since Antonio Pierce has
mm.
come. And maybe since like early John Gruden. And I feel like they gave the Colts enough trouble where I'd be able to see, okay, I could see a scenario where the Texans would be able to slow them down and beat them because the first game was kind of a beatdown in Houston, but that was a very young Texans team. So we could kind of see the full maturation of the Houston Texans, and then it'll come around full circle there. But I wouldn't be discouraged if I was the Colts because then you have Anthony Richardson coming back next year, a healthy Michael Pittman. You hit on Josh Downs in the draft. He's going to be even better next year. Alec Pierce is a very nice piece. And then Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor as a duo are incredible.
Yeah, I think these are both two teams that over they exceeded expectations this year. One of which obviously Anthony Richardson was hurt, but even with the Texans as well, like these are two teams that have so much to look forward to next year. Um, I think the Colts are probably a better team at this point, but I just feel the Texans right now with CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans that I think that they're going to be the ones that pull things off here.
Yeah. And then these are two quarterbacks that are kind of both clutch because Gardner Minshew, like a lot of people kind of just scoff at him when you say it, but there have been a lot of games this season where he's been able to lead his team to victory on last second drives and in a tough environment too. Like the Baltimore Ravens game was very impressive for me, where
Yeah.
he was able to lead them to victory in overtime. And then I would think it was Tampa Bay that he was able to upset them and then break their heart. They were able to come back and win in overtime. And then I believe the Titans as well. And then CJ Stroud has had some of the most clutch drives in the league so far this year. I
Yeah.
mean, you want to talk about that game at home when they were trailing. He threw for damn near 500 yards and was able to bring his team back and
Mhm.
win that game. So these are two very clutch quarterbacks. Do you think it comes down to whoever has the ball last is going to win?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that yeah, it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. I think that the defenses for both teams will play really well. I think this will be a low scoring game for the most part, but yeah, pretty much whoever has the ball last, it's going to be the one who gets the win.
Yeah, but I'll lean Texans here as well. So we'll slide the Texans into that 7 seed. And then we have another basically playoff game here. It's not win or go home because both these teams will make the playoffs, but it's going to be very important, especially matchup wise. We have the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. We have two quarterbacks that kind of get flustered when there's a lot of pressure and things aren't going their way and start to turn the ball over in Josh Allen and Tua. So this is going to be in Miami. The last time that the Miami Dolphins beat a winning team other than the Dallas Cowboys was Buffalo a couple weeks ago. Ended up coming down to a last second drive. What's your early gut feeling on this game, and who do you think the NFL wants to win?
Oh, I think the NFL definitely wants the Bills to win. And I feel more confident in the Bills, believe it or not, at this point. I was not impressed with what I saw from the Dolphins against the Ravens. I wasn't really impressed with what I saw against the Cowboys, even though they won. I haven't been impressed with really any good team that they faced. And the Bills, they have their issues and there's been a lot of turnovers. They've played sloppy football, but I do think that they are a good team overall. And the NFL is going to want to see Josh Allen in the playoffs. So I think the Bills are going to be able to take care of the Dolphins. It's not going to be like what we saw last week necessarily, but I do think that the Bills will prevail in like a 28-25 kind of game.
Now, do you think the Dolphins could upset the Chiefs at all? Do you give them any chance, or do you think just with how bad they've been on the road and then just up against winning teams, especially with Spagnola's defense, that it would really just be they're not going to do enough against KC's defense, and
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey will be able to make a play?
Yeah, I feel like that Germany game, like I know it's an overseas game and those games I usually shouldn't take to value, but I feel like that's the kind of game I would expect in the playoffs with them. I don't expect the Chiefs to blow them out, but I also don't expect the Dolphins to put up a lot of points.
Right.
So I think that they're going to basically be able to mitigate Tyreek Hill, not necessarily contain him. And if they can do that, then I feel like it's more or less Tua who I don't trust in those big moments.
Okay. And so we have another scenario though. Say the Buffalo Bills lose
Mhm.
and Indy or Houston wins, then they would both make the playoffs. But Buffalo, there's still a chance they could miss the playoffs. Baltimore has already clinched that number 1 seed, so there's a potential that they could be resting players or not going as hard as could. Maybe you dodge some plays to avoid an injury here. But they are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last time they played them, this time last year, they ended up the Steelers ended up winning. It was a Sunday night football matchup where Chris Collinsworth was going crazy about Kenny Pickett's arm angles. Do you think there's a chance that the Steelers can win this game and then foil the Bills season if they lose to Miami?
Yeah, but I don't want this. If I'm talking about what I want to see the playoffs with, I think the Steelers are going to win because the
Yeah.
Ravens, they're not going to start Lamar. They're not going to start, pretty much all of their offensive talent or any of these other people. But I think that the Steelers are going to win, definitely. The Bills kind of have to win this game against the Dolphins. So I do think that they're both going to, make that playoffs. But do I see it happening? Yes. And that would be very scary for me.
Yeah, because do you think I'll ask you this. Do you think the Steelers or the Dolphins would be a better matchup for the Chiefs?
What's that?
Do you think the Steelers or the Dolphins would be a better matchup for the Chiefs? Like who do you think would give them a tougher time? Because I think the Steelers would.
I think the Steelers would too as well. Because I mean, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Joey Porter Jr. Like the Chiefs already struggle to score points, and I think that the Steelers would be able to give them some trouble. Plus,
Yeah.
Mason Rudolph, he's been better than someone like someone like Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. So
Yeah, and then Kenny Pickett also refused to back up Mason Rudolph on Sunday versus the Seattle Seahawks, which I think is kind of crazy for a guy who hasn't even had as many touchdowns as Joe Flacco this season.
yeah, I think like of all people, like Kenny Pickett, you're somebody who the Steelers have to convince themselves to go into next season with.
Yeah.
And it's like you've had 10 touchdowns on the season. You haven't shown to be that guy. Mason Rudolph, who is not by any means a starting quarterback in this NFL, of all people, you're the guy who's having this issue here. Like, you should be able to back up Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, you should be able to back up Mason Rudolph because guess what? You're not better than Justin Fields. So if the Steelers aren't in a good position to draft a quarterback, they might be like, hey, that looks like a pretty good option. Maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are stupid and don't want to pay Baker Mayfield $30 million a year. And the Steelers could be like, hey, we'll take Baker here, bring him back to the AFC North. He's familiar with the division. So it's like your job is not safe and you haven't performed that well. And the fact that you think Deontay Johnson is a better option to throw to than George Pickens is just lunacy.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I don't want to back up Mason Rudolph. Then I might learn that throwing to your best option at wide receiver is probably the best thing to do on the football field. Like, as soon as Mason Rudolph started playing, I was like, oh, he throws the ball to George Pickens. He's not afraid to go up into someone like Myles Garrett's face. Like, okay, say what you want about the guy. At least he's like, he'll fling it.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to fling it. He doesn't care because he knows at this point he'll be a backup. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, I don't know. Like, I just don't feel like, I can't picture the Dolphins winning versus the Buffalo Bills. And I think this could be kind of a fluky game. And the fact that the Bills beat them so bad when last year, both the times they played were close.
Yeah.
It's like it was a one possession game both the times, and they played them in Buffalo and it was snowing. We went out for that game and the Dolphins were like, okay, maybe the Dolphins have something there.
Yeah. Again, think about like when we make these predictions, right? We're talking about, obviously we give our opinion, but also what the NFL wants. And I think what the NFL wants, the Browns are solidified at the 5 seed. The Bills in Dolphins game, if the Bills win, the Dolphins will be the 6th seed.
Yeah.
And then, the winner of the Colts and Texans game will be the 7th seed.
Yeah.
And I think that what the NFL wants is going to be Cleveland, Miami, and Houston in this game. Colts and Texans, I think, is maybe indifferent, but they're going to want to see the Bills at the 2 seed.
Yeah, they want to see the Bills at the 2 seed, and they want to see the Bills face off against someone like either CJ Stroud or face off against the Indianapolis Colts, who the Bills have struggled with in the past when they weren't able to stop the run game. And then with the Kansas City Chiefs, there is a storyline there where if the Miami Dolphins lose that game, the NFL doesn't care because they're still in the playoffs, and then they get the storyline. When I was talking about the Rams and Lions, I was like, oh, I mentioned if the Dolphins lost, they would go to the 6th seed. And I was like, then we would see Tyreek Hill versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. They already played this year. The Chiefs kind of jumped out and then their offense stalled in that game. And the Dolphins ended up having a chance to win in that game. So it was like Tyreek Hill in Kansas City going home. Maybe there's a little bit of blood there, at least some competitive spirit. So I think that's something the NFL would want. And then Jaguars, Browns. I feel like this probably be the least entertaining game out of any of them.
Yeah, there is a chance that the Jaguars don't clinch. I think they need to lose, and then I believe the Colts have the tiebreaker in this one.
The Colts would have to win in this game scenario because let me see, the Jaguars have the same record as the Colts and the Texans right now. However, the Colts lost to them, and then the Texans don't have the tiebreaker. So if the Jags do lose this week, the winner of that game would win the division.
Okay, so the Jags lose, and then the winner of that division would then be facing the Browns, which, I don't know, would you rather face the Bills or you rather face the Browns at this point? I feel like those are two teams that...
The Bills, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that you'll be able to face the Browns at home, which might be an advantage to some of them, but... Like
the Texans just got dog walked at home by the Browns, though.
Yeah. So
the Colts, though, that was probably the best regular season game so far.
Yeah.
Was Colts Browns.
Yeah, so we would see Colts win that division here. Um, I honestly, can you see the Jags falling to that 7th seed?
I, yeah, I kind of hope so. I would like to see a rematch between Jacksonville and Buffalo, just because, like, can we rest Trevor and then get Christian Kirk healthy? And then if we come back, that's still a situation where I could see the Bills choking. And the best matchup possible would be the Jacksonville Jaguars beating the Bills or someone from the AFC South. So I wouldn't mind them falling to the 7th seed, to be honest,
I think that would set up a better matchup because
for sure.
unless if it's like CJ Stroud versus Josh Allen, talking about two guys who
Yeah.
some would put in the top 5 together, right? With Trevor Lawrence, he's another guy who will be often compared to Josh Allen. You'll see them head to head.
Yeah.
They'll have the coaching matchups and everything here. I think that would honestly be a better game there. I'd much rather see Trevor Lawrence versus Josh Allen than like Gardner Minshew against him, or even CJ Stroud. Like
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, if he can put up a fight against that Browns team, like
Yeah, and I feel like Gardner Minshew versus Joe Flacco is just more lit because it was the most fun game I feel like anyone had watching football. It was the heart attack game. The Colts had the black helmets and they probably had like the coolest uniforms that they have there in
Mhm.
that game. Myles Garrett jumping over, blocking field goals. So if we can get that type of game again, I feel like the NFL wouldn't mind that. And then the Colts would just have to win though, which we both have the Texans in that game.
yeah, anything's possible. I'm excited to see how this shakes down.
So, let's solidify it though. So we would have at this point the Texans, Dolphins, Browns, and then we would probably have the Jaguars, Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens. Out of those matchups, um, who would you have to win? I would have the Browns over the Jaguars. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
The Chiefs over the Dolphins,
Yeah,
and then I would have the Texans over the Bills.
I would have the Bills over the Texans.
Bills over the Texans. Okay. And then after that, so that would set up, let's just go with the Bills because they would probably be the favorite in that game. Then we would have Bills versus Chiefs in the second round. Do you think Buffalo finally gets it done?
Um, I have to see how they play against the Texans, but I think the NFL and how the Chiefs have looked, I feel like this is where the Bills get that win. Again, kind of like Peyton Manning in 2006 against Brady, finally gets his win, goes to the AFC title game. I would pick the Bills to win.
Okay. And then the Ravens, if you're resting your starters 2 straight weeks, I would say that's advantage Cleveland Browns. They come out flat. The Brickyard has ranked the Cleveland Browns as the #1 team according to the official secret documents. So that would set up Bills and Browns in the conference championship. Disgusting.
That's crazy.
That is gross.
That is gross. Joe Flacco versus Josh Allen. And in that game, I think the Bills would be in a lot of trouble with that Browns defense.
Joe Cool versus Josh Spaz. Like, yeah, the Browns would run over them. I think that game would be a blowout and not even particularly close. Because, like, if the Bills can't run the football and Josh Allen is throwing it 50 times, that's a recipe to get blown out in that game.
That would be a stain on his legacy.
For
Well,
sure. Losing to Joe Flacco, like, all of the chips are lined up for you, and they're like, oh, yeah, he almost did it, but then he lost to Joe Flacco.
Because think about what a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen Super Bowl would mean for just where they rank in the conversation for best quarterbacks in the league. And if Josh Allen goes to the AFC title game, and he's facing the Browns, even though Joe Flacco's balling, and even though that Browns team is spectacular, you got to be the favorites. You got to be the guy who brings your team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's cool because the most likely outcome is probably going to be either Bills, Ravens, or Bills and Browns. I don't believe in the Bills enough to pick them to make it even past the first round. I would think the Texans or the Colts would beat them. But if that's the matchup, then you would have basically either Lamar and Josh Allen playing for that #2 spot, and then they would overtake Joe Burrow if they win the Super Bowl. I don't think the Bills would be able to beat the Niners if they make it, but I think the Ravens would be the best matchup. And I don't think the Bills would really have a chance versus the Ravens or the Browns.
Yeah, I think the Bills can make the AFC title game. I think that's possible, especially you're going to face the 7th seed in this scenario, and then you face a struggling Chiefs team. I think you could beat those two teams, right? Whether
Right.
it be the Colts or the Texans or potentially the Jaguars. I think you can beat the Chiefs. But then when it comes down to the two best teams according to the Brickyard, I don't think you stand a chance. I think you'll lose there. whether it be Lamar or Joe Flacco that leads the way, I don't see them making the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it'll be Myles Garrett, Jim Schwartz, Juan Thornhill, and Denzel Ward leading the way in that game. But that's a really good breakdown. So we went over all of the scenarios in the AFC. It's going to be a wild playoff run, especially with how the season has gone. I think it's shaping up to be one of the most expect the unexpected playoff runs we've ever seen. So really excited to see that there. Wouldn't even be surprised if Gardner Minshew got a playoff run, but anything can happen. But then that brings us to the NFC here, where we start with the Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks. They're pretty much battling for that 7 seed at this point, and the Green Bay Packers would clinch it with the Seattle or Green Bay loss, or all they have to do is beat the Chicago Bears, and they are locked into that 7 seed to play either the Dallas Cowboys or the Detroit Lions, depending on how the Commanders play the last week of the season.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting. So the Packers historically destroy the Bears, right?
Right.
That's how it's been the last several years. But that's what we also said last year with the Lions as well, where they historically beat up on the Lions. They
Yeah.
historically own them. And the Bears, I think they own them a little bit more than they own the Lions. You
Yeah.
see a scenario where the Bears upset them and the Packers are out of the playoffs because of it, back-to-back years.
Yeah, definitely. Last year I was the one who went against the media. I was like, I do not care that the Packers historically own the Lions. I picked the Lions to play spoiler in that game. I thought it'd be hilarious to see the Lions upset Aaron Rodgers, and it would be the first time that the Lions had beat the Packers twice in a season in pretty much 10 years or 10 to 20 years. So I picked the Lions to win that game going against the narrative. I think the Chicago Bears have a really good chance, and honestly, my gut feeling says the Bears are going to win. Because I just think with everything Matt Eberflus has done with that team, especially defensively, they went toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions, albeit in Chicago. And then that's kind of been Jared Goff's house of horrors throughout his career, has been Chicago. And then you also look at it with Cole Kmet being the foundation, being the centerpiece for that franchise. Does he have one more big game in him?
Hmm.
And then you also look at it that even though this game doesn't matter to the Chicago Bears, you're locked into that number 1 pick, so you're not playing for draft status at this point. Matt Eberflus is trying to build a culture there, as the Bears have said they're going to keep him as his head coach. And then Justin Fields is also auditioning for a job. So this is one of the biggest games for him because he gets to spoil the Packers basically season and chance of making the playoffs. So you can look at it like everyone in that division hates the Packers. Like
Yeah.
Vikings fans are happy for the Lions. Bears fans are happy for the Lions. They're like anyone but the Packers in that division because they got Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers back to back. And now Jordan Love has more passing yards than any Bears quarterback. So I think this is a prime situation for an upset.
Yeah, I think with all those things that you mentioned there, I think I'm looking at the graphic now. I'm looking at ESPN after the game, right? And it says 2023 lost to the Lions, 2024 lost to the Bears to spoil their playoff hopes. Because all they needed to do was beat the Lions to make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and it could set up a historic run for both teams because the Lions go on to win the division next year. Who's to say that the Bears won't go on and win the division next year if they get Caleb Williams?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually going to go with you on this one. I actually do think the Bears are going to upset the Packers
Okay.
for that second time.
So then it would come down to a Seattle Seahawks and a Vikings loss, and they would still be able to make the playoffs here. Let me pull up who both of those teams play. I believe Seattle. Let me pull it up here. So in this game, Seattle plays the Cardinals in Arizona. Seattle has kind of been on a skid here. They just lost to the Steelers at home. Arizona just beat Philadelphia, feeling good about themselves. Do you think Arizona has a chance in this game and Kyler Murray can play spoiler versus the Seahawks?
Yeah, I think so. I think of all the teams in the division that the Cardinals face historically, I think the Seahawks are the team that they always play the closest. So it's kind of reminds me of how the Vikings and Lions are historically. They
Yeah.
play very close. It always comes down to a last second drive. And I think Kyler, I mean, he's kind of in a similar situation where it doesn't really, their draft pick doesn't matter all that much. I think they're going to be seeking to have Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's the guy that they're targeting the most. And they can get that whether that's at 3 or 4. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So I definitely think they can. I do think the Seahawks will win, though.
Mhm.
just because I think that
Revenge in Dallas. Okay, that's a good matchup too. Then.
yeah. So it's weird because I think the 7th seed, it's going to be the Cowboys at 2 at this point because of the refs rigging the game for them last week. Um, and there's not whoever ends up getting the 7th seed. I don't think the storyline's going to be all that compelling. I'm
Yeah.
actually rooting for the Seahawks in that one because of what happened not too long ago, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I would love to see Deron Bland get cooked by DK Metcalf because Seattle proved they can go toe to toe with them. That was with Geno Smith being injured. That was with Geno Smith being banged up here. That is with the Seattle Seahawks feeling slighted last time. That is with Pete Carroll having all this ammunition. That is with him being able to call his buddy Dan Campbell, like, hey, we felt screwed too. Can you get me hyped up for this game? And he's like, fuck yeah, buddy. I'll hype you up for this game. And then also, Kenneth Walker didn't play in that game. And
That's
that's
true.
a key piece for the Seattle Seahawks. They're running it with their backup running back. Is Kenneth Walker going to play in this game? Hell yeah, he's going to play in this game. And that's their elite running back. And then Geno Smith versus Dak Prescott. Is the gap really that big? No, not really. And then when you look at the Seattle Seahawks weapons, they're kind of better than Dallas at this point. I would say Kenneth Walker and Tony Pollard. There's not a huge gap between them. Maybe you take Tony Pollard there.
I would say Kenneth Walker.
You
Personally.
take Kenneth Walker, but like DK versus CeeDee Lamb, I would say CeeDee Lamb is better, but DK Metcalf's ceiling is slightly higher if his team would just get him the ball. And then you look at Tyler Lockett, has experience, okay. And then you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's better than the Cowboys 3. Then you look at Will Disley and Noah Fant versus Jake Ferguson. It's like
It's not that crazy.
Seattle can go pound for pound for them, and they already proved that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it came down to just a bunch of penalties for the Cowboys to end up winning that game. So, yeah, I don't think that's a crazy story by any means. I would take CeeDee Lamb. I think I would still take Brandon Cooks over Tyler Lockett, but when it comes to Jackson Smith and Jigba and Michael Gallup, it's not particularly close. Tight ends, it's kind of a wash. Running backs, I'd take the Seahawks. Quarterbacks, like doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, doesn't really move the needle for me much. So
it really depends on the day with Dak and Geno Smith. It's like a day-to-day type of thing, but I don't think that the Cowboys are as dominant as the San Francisco 49ers. So I actually think Seattle has a good shot to upset them, either them or the Packers if they play the Cowboys.
yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so we both have Seattle slipping into that 1 seed. Don't really think the Saints have a chance. They would have to basically have all of these teams lose and then win, or they have to win their division to make it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Saints have to win their division, and then if the Saints and the Buccaneers lose this week, then the Atlanta Falcons would make it. Do you see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing to the David Tepper-led Carolina Panthers, or do you think no amount of beers poured on fans will help the Buccaneers win this game?
I think the Bucks annihilate them. We saw what happened when they got annihilated last week against the Jaguars, who were reeling. The Bucks are still playing good football. Baker Mayfield, he's in that conversation as well. When someone like Colin Cowherd was saying he should retire at the beginning of the season, he's gone on an absolute tear. He's had better numbers than Patrick Mahomes in this season. Look at the numbers. So I think unless if hell freezes over and unless if the sky starts raining meatballs, I think that it's going to be the Bucks.
Yeah, and the NFL wants them to win too, because we talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers, how they fell off. They started 10-0, 11-0, and then they didn't win a single game after that. And then the Philadelphia Eagles have the same vibe of that Steelers team. Devontae Smith basically saying, we are lost right now. We don't know what we're doing. AJ Brown disappearing after that incredible run that he had when he was putting himself in the MVP conversation with Jalen Hurts there. And then you have that coming around to a matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think Philadelphia, it's not going to jump Dallas this week. And I feel like at this point, they should probably just rest their starters versus the Giants. And you'd rather see your players get healthy than risk someone like one of your stars getting hurt here. The problem is your run defense and your front seven is really good. So if you face off against Tampa Bay, they don't run the ball. They just throw it down the field to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Kate Otten. So it's like your greatest weakness is Tampa Bay's offense's greatest strength. And what Bill Belichick does, make you play left-handed. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles can't do that because they just let C.J. Gardner-Johnson walk to the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and I think the Bucks, with all that momentum, they're also playing with house money. We projected them to go 1-16 this year.
2-15, yeah.
Yeah, we were expecting them to be absolutely terrible. And I mean, Baker Mayfield's had this renaissance with him. We mentioned the Colin Cowherd quote when they said earlier this year he would be home, basically just retire from the NFL.
Yeah.
And now they're a really solid team. I think they win this division. I pray that they win this division because I would hate to see the Saints or the Falcons in the playoffs. And I know they're not in this division, but also the Vikings as well. The Bucks, we have Baker Mayfield. He is a star, whether he is a top 10 quarterback or not.
He is this year.
The NFL loves him.
Yeah.
The NFL loves Baker Mayfield, and so do the fans. So I think they're going to be pushing for the Bucks to get the win.
Okay. And then that brings us to the LA Rams. They basically just win and they would be locked into that 6th seed there. And then we have the Lions slipping into the 7th. So even if they lose, I still think that the Rams have the tiebreaker. So they would pretty much be locked into that 6th seed and they would face off against the Detroit Lions here in that first round.
And this is where I think it comes full circle for the Lions. We saw them. They traded Matt Stafford. They went 3-13, and then they started to build the roots.
Yeah.
They started to bite some kneecaps. They started to like the taste of blood. And this is when it's a full circle moment for Detroit. This is when their curse is lifted, and they get their first playoff win since 1993 by beating Sean McVay and the team that traded away Jared Goff.
Do you see any way that the Rams could upset them? Like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua just going off in this game?
Of course. I mean, I'm not going to count against Matt Stafford, Sean McVay and all those guys there. They've been to a Super Bowl. They have playoff success. So it's not impossible. I just think the Lions, it feels like their year. And then maybe this is my emotions taking over because I am a big fan of this team this year. But I think this is the Lions year they get their playoff win. And if they don't, it's going to be a real blow, I think.
Yeah. Isn't that cool that we said this would happen too? I was like, the NFL probably wants this matchup in the first round. And we were talking about this weeks ago before anyone else. We were talking about Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay weeks ago before anyone else. And then we were talking about Dallas as the 2 seed versus potentially Seattle getting revenge or the Green Bay Packers there. So been pretty much spot on with the NFC playoff picture. And then we have the Niners are locked into that 1 seed. They have the tiebreaker over the Dallas Cowboys because they stomped them out earlier this year. So let's do some hypotheticals with our playoff picture now. We would have Seattle versus Dallas in the first round. You like Seattle or Dallas?
I think I'd still take Dallas just because they're at home.
Okay, so I'll go with the favorite there. So Dallas Cowboys, and then we would have Tampa Bay versus Philadelphia. I like Tampa in that game. I've been saying it for a couple weeks now. So then we have Tampa versus San Francisco in the second round, and then Detroit versus the Cowboys. I know I'm riding with the Lions because they got screwed over that first time, and it would be a great story for the NFL if they go there, absolutely beat the crap out of the Cowboys after that.
Yeah, that's what I'm rooting for. I would love to see that go down. The Lions make the NFC title game for the first time since the 50s. Yeah, I'm on board for that one. So yeah, give me the Lions to beat the Cowboys.
All right, and then we would have the 49ers versus Tampa Bay in San Francisco. Do you give the Bucks a chance at all, or do you think nice run? It was a good story.
It was a good story. I think the Niners just are at a different speed. They're a better roster. They're gonna take care of business.
All right, then we would have Lions versus the Detroit Lions. Yeah, we would have the Lions versus the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. And one thing we know about the San Francisco 49ers is that Midwest teams have been their weakness, and the way the Detroit Lions have played, similar to the Browns with how they can run the football, similar to how the Vikings beat them, similar to how Cleveland beat them, and then Baltimore. I'm taking Detroit. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. I am riding with that pick. I'm not backing down now. And I have a Lions-Browns Super Bowl. That's my Super Bowl.
Yeah, honestly, I'm here for it. I'm going to hop on the train as well. I think the Lions, I think they are capable of shutting down, especially with CJ Gardner-Johnson coming back. And if they can get a lead, ultimately, that's what it's going to cost them. Because who do I trust more, Brock Purdy or Jared Goff? I would take Jared Goff. Running game, obviously, I have CMC. But wide receivers, I definitely would say Deebo Samuel. But, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Deebo Samuel, at this point, they're playing kind of the same level. And then tight end, like I think tit for tat, like these teams are not that far apart from each other. And I
No.
think the Lions are also, they're playing with a different edge than I think the 49ers are.
Yeah, the difference is going to be someone like a Fred Warner is going to be that difference maker that the Lions don't have because he'll be able to blow up the run game. He'll be able to blow up the passing game with Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. He'll probably spend some time on Sam Laporta, but Jared Goff is familiar with the San Francisco 49ers. He had some success against them with the LA Rams. And then last year when they played the San Francisco 49ers, it was actually a surprisingly close game. So
Mhm.
Jared Goff isn't unfamiliar and he's not going to be over his skis because he's been to a conference championship before. I know Brock Purdy has played in one, but has he really been to a conference championship? No, not really. So
Mhm.
I think this definitely is the Detroit Lions year. San Francisco also, they're kind of perpetual chokers in the fourth quarter. I hate to say it, but
And in the title game too.
yeah, and in the title game when they were losing versus Baltimore, you still had plenty of chances to stay in that game, and then Kyle Shanahan couldn't get out of his own way. You blew a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. The Detroit Lions are the comeback kids, so give me Lions Browns in the Super Bowl.
Who would have guessed this a couple of years ago? Honestly.
Honestly, yeah. Especially like you go through 4 quarterbacks with the Cleveland Browns. It might be the greatest story in NFL history with Joe Flacco, especially Kevin Stefanski, definitely deserving winning coach of the year. But I think the top 2 candidates for coach of the year, Dan Campbell, Kevin Stefanski, facing off in a Super Bowl. And then for me, like Jared Goff, you want to talk about valuable coming to Detroit after being with the Rams. He had every right to just pout, to quit, pack it in, NFL career over, but he grinded year in, year out, the blood, sweat, and tears when he was going through 2-15 season, and then starting 1-7 last year, and then rallying his team. Like, you want to talk about a valuable leader in that locker room to complement Dan Campbell? Like, it's Jared Goff. Like, could you
Mhm.
see someone like Dak Prescott getting traded to the Lions and doing this? Could you see any other quarterback who's slightly average or who everyone buried and then the media just ripping this guy for no reason at
They
all?
always
They
have.
love to jump on Jared Goff, and then they're like, "Oh, fair weather bandwagon." Then as soon as he has a bad game, they rip him to shreds. Like Josh Allen hasn't had 4 turnover games. Like Dak doesn't have 4 turnover games.
Mhm.
Like Lamar doesn't have turnover games. Like Brock Purdy doesn't do it. Like Mahomes doesn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because I think that Dak Prescott and Jared Goff are pretty close to one another, but the treatment of the two could not be any more different. Dak Prescott, they're constantly trying to put in the top 5, which is ludicrous. And then Jared Goff, like it's like as if this guy cannot play football at all to them. It's ridiculous. This is a guy that's been to a Super Bowl. I know that there's Sean McVay and he had a great coach there, but he did bring them there, and it was a one-score game for the most part in that game. You faced off against the best defensive coach of all time. You beat the Saint. Like he's a solid quarterback. He's lived up to the expectations. So yeah, I don't know what the hype's about.
Yeah, it's like, are we gonna pretend that Dak didn't have prime Zeke, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb all on the same team?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But we've been previewed for the NFC and the AFC playoff picture. Now we can look to the games, and also we kind of bullied them a couple weeks ago. That being the Detroit Pistons. Uh, we the, we joked how the Pistons were the sacrificial lamb for the city of Detroit for the Lions to have their success. Well, Saturday night, what did we see? We saw the Lions lose in a heartbreaking fashion to the Cowboys. Coincidentally, also the same night that the Detroit Pistons broke their 28-game losing streak against none other than the Toronto Raptors, who just recently traded OG Anunoby for RJ Barrett. So,
And Emmanuel quickly.
yeah,
knew?
so who knew? The Raptors players seen after the game at Wingstop indulging on their free wings, something that the city of Detroit has not seen for 2 months now.
Yeah, something that the city of Detroit hasn't seen for 2 months. And as Cade Cunningham said, like, yeah, I think we're bad, but are we like lose an all-time record of games in a row? Nah, I refuse to believe that as he looked depressed, falling asleep. He's with Mac Jones listening to some emo music. He's right there, just being all around sad, especially being in Detroit. And then Monty Williams, I keep hearing people like Chris Broussard being like, Monty Williams, he's like a good guy and a good coach. I'm like, is Monty Williams a good coach if you break the record for the most losses in a row? And it was the trust the process 76ers team who were the process who lost it. And how did they do that? Okay, well, bust Jaleel Okafor on that team. You had Nerlens Noel on that team. And then when you drafted Ben Simmons, he wasn't very good when he first came into the league as a rookie because he couldn't shoot. Well, the Detroit Pistons have absolute bust in James Wiseman. You have
Jaron Duran.
Jaron Duran on that team. I believe they still have Marvin Bagley Jr. on that team.
They
Detroit loves bringing in centers who can't shoot. They love bringing in centers who are taking over players like LaMelo Ball or actually good players in the league.
Like Luka Doncic.
Like Luka Doncic. Yeah, so I guess DeAndre Ayton, we know his next stop after Portland's probably going to be there. Maybe the Detroit Pistons go out and go after Hassan Whiteside. Surprised they haven't gone after JaVale McGee yet. Maybe they can resurrect Kenneth Faried's career because he had an amazing season, then he kind of disappeared. Maybe when they want a coach in the future, they'll hire DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, and for all we know, and I think he might actually be on this team, unironically, a guy who they were supposed to recruit back to Miami when LeBron was signing there, Shabazz Napier. Maybe he comes back from the grave.
Yeah, the UConn kid, like, I like Shabazz Napier because, like, the first, I believe, college football, like, March Madness run I remember was when UConn won it versus Butler when Brad Stevens was there.
Yep.
And it was Shabazz Napier. I believe Andre Drummond was on that team, another
Yep.
Detroit Pistons player,
Yep.
and then Kemba. So maybe Kemba Walker can come back from Europe and play for the Detroit Pistons because he's been balling out there. Then they
Yeah.
could just put together that old UConn team.
Yeah, there we go. Just maybe 10 years too late, but that'll be an interesting sight. But there is something there with the Detroit sacrificial lamb, because as soon as the Pistons win a game, the Lions experience heartbreak. And now, we need to see another historic losing streak for the Pistons so that we can see the Lions make it over the top.
Yeah, and it's like the Lions are literally reducing crime. What are the Pistons doing?
Not giving us free wings,
Yeah.
except for on Saturday.
Yeah, I guess they bribed the Toronto Raptors with free wings there, but it was funny because we're talking about going out for that game. We ended up going out for the Saturday night game with Dallas and the Cowboys, and I was like joking how we need a demand to have that game on. I was like, if anyone's going to lose to Detroit, it's going to be the Raptors, and that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened. And then they trade away OG Anunoby, who was kind of just like, he was okay, he's fine.
He's good.
He fits in with the Knicks players, kind of like a tough 3-and-D guy, streaky player there. And then Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett. Quickly's okay. He's a good grinder, but RJ Barrett is a bust because he was taken at number 3 and he was supposed to be, I don't know, should they take Zion Williamson or RJ Barrett? The answer is Ja Morant.
Yeah.
Because he's better than both of them combined at this point. But the Raptors pretty much auctioning everyone off. They had that one-off championship with Kawhi Leonard, and then after that, pretty much just fallen off a cliff from there, and it's all been downhill. Do you think Pascal Siakam, could you see him maybe getting traded to a contender, potentially the Warriors, if they want to give up on Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, package them in a deal?
Yeah, I think that Warriors team, like, you've had your run. You've won 4 titles. It's been a great run with them, but we're seeing Klay Thompson now show that he's regressing, and he's only going to continue to regress at this point. It's time to move on from Klay Thompson. And then Draymond Green, I mean, how many people is he going to punch in the face? How many people is he going to knee in the balls? How many people is he going to literally choke out? Like,
And it's like, I wouldn't mind if Draymond did that and actually owned up to it. Like, yeah, I punched him in the face. Yeah, I need him in the balls. But he's like, the way he just tries to gaslight people and victim blame, I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
yeah. And it's like, at some point, the Warriors, they still have Steph Curry. He is still playing fantastic. He's definitely in the MVP conversation. It's like, how long are they going to just keep this core alive before they end up breaking it off?
Yeah.
Think about the Bulls. Like, at some point, Scottie Pippen had to go. At some point, we had to see the people like Horace Grant and Kukoc and all these people end up leaving the team. It's like, inevitably, when you're in a dynasty, people leave. And I think now is the time for Klay Thompson because he's still getting paid a ludicrous amount of money at this point.
Could you see, like, because Clay's been bad, like, he's shooting like 20% from 3 the past couple weeks here, and he can't play defense anymore because of a couple knee injuries, and it's not necessarily his fault, and players get old. Like, it happens. It's part of the game. Could you see, like, if Steph is like next year, they still can't build another team, they still can't get another star besides Draymond and Clay? Could you see Steph being like, okay, maybe it's time for me to leave?
I don't see him. He seems like a guy who's going to stay in Golden State. I don't know where else he could go because, like, he's not going to go to the Lakers
Yeah.
as much as the Lakers fans will think so. I don't know. Like, I think he really likes California. He's got family there. I see him as a guy who's going to be there for his entire career. I think he just might demand them to get him a second star at that point, which I
Yeah.
think they should do that now.
Could you see him going home?
To Charlotte?
Yeah. Because like think about it, like how much, like you know how much like the championship meant to LeBron and Cleveland. Like, well, LeBron basically dated you, was never gonna offer you a ring. As soon as he came into some money, he got a crypto investment, and then he's like, oh shoot, suddenly I have Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. He leaves you, goes and lives the whole life in Miami, gets a couple rings, ends up underachieving in Miami, chokes in a couple of finals there, and then he comes back after hoeing around, and then he comes back to Cleveland. It's a lot less special, but then he gives you the ring. So it's like, okay, we appreciate that. But if Steph just goes there and gets them a ring, I feel like it'd be more impactful for Charlotte than it was for Cleveland with LeBron winning.
See, I don't agree with that necessarily, just because LeBron was like the chosen one for them. Where I
Yeah.
don't think Steph Curry is considered as like the chosen one for the city of Charlotte. I think him going there and him winning with LaMelo would be great. And I think, especially if he has his 5th ring there, I think that would definitely put him. If he's not, I think he's already a top 10 player of all time. That would solidify him in the top 10
Yeah.
with that. I think LeBron's title meant more for the city of Cleveland because of the fact that he
Hey.
was taken first overall. He spent his time there. He left. He broke up with them. He came back, got them the ring that he promised. I think that means more for the city of Cleveland than Charlotte would.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Cleveland, I talked to a few people and they're like, it's a love-hate because they hate that LeBron left and came back, and they're like, he's like, no, not a LeBron fan at all. And like a lot of people are like, LeBron is a hoe, basically. Like, I'm glad he came back. I'm glad he got us a ring, but like they weren't like they don't root for him outside of Cleveland. A few people I talked to there were like, yeah, LeBron basically broke our heart, came back, and we were his sloppy seconds. And that's kind of the feeling I got from a lot of people there.
Yeah, but at the same time, like he went there, promised them a ring, got them a ring, so he'll still be in their high graces. I think when he retires, I think their emotions will subside a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, because those will kind of go the side here, especially. But Cleveland, they are on the up and up here with the Browns, and I feel like the Browns winning a Super Bowl would mean a lot for the city of Cleveland. So let's go through and preview all of the games this week, which will lead to potentially the ability for Cleveland to be able to get to the top and then win the Super Bowl here. Starting in their own division in the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens have clinched the #1 seed, so their pedal might not be all the way down to the metal here, and they're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, starting Mason Rudolph. The ball is in his hands in Baltimore on Saturday at 4:33 p.m. on January 6th, the new holiday for America.
Yeah. I think because they already have that 1 seed clinched, I'm going to pick the Steelers to win this game. Mason Rudolph has been slinging it, giving it to the guy who matters most, George Pickens, and Najee Harris edging all of the fantasy owners the last several weeks. Oh, wait, he actually played pretty good down the stretch. Okay, I make that mistake for the 3rd year in a row. Go ahead. Give me the Steelers in this game. I think they win. It'll be a grimy game, 16-13, typical AFC North game.
Yeah, I'll take the Steelers as well. The Baltimore Ravens have been crazy hot. You definitely want to take that momentum into the playoffs, but I think they do take the pedal off the metal in this game. And I think Mason Rudolph is going to have a conversation with Sean McDermott before this game. And Sean McDermott will be like, you need to be like the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and channel that. Go into Baltimore and storm the Ravens stadium. And I feel like that conversation with Sean McDermott's really going to help Mason Rudolph here. So I'll take the Steelers as well.
Absolutely. That's a good thing. The insurrectionist. That
Yeah.
is Sean McDermott.
Sean McDermott loves insurrection and he loves 9/11. And then we have the game of the week. Win or go home. Potentially, you could win your division if you win this game. We have the Houston Texans. We have the Indianapolis Colts, and the Texans are 1-point favorites in Indianapolis in this game. Last time they played, the Ravens annihilated the Colts. We both have the Texans in this game, but let's go ahead and preview it here. It's a 1-point spread. Do you think the Colts cover that, or do you think the Texans will be able to win by more than one?
Honestly, that's a good question. I would take, because I think it'll ultimately come down to a field goal, I will take the Texans to cover that spread here. I think it's going to be like a 23-20 kind of game. relatively low scoring, two teams who have inconsistencies on offense and defense. I'll take the Texans to cover.
Yeah, I'll take the Texans to cover and win this game as well. I'll go with CJ Stroud in this game. Everything has been building to this moment where he got hurt for a couple weeks, kind of dampened their playoff chances, and then they were able to escape Tennessee with a win, playing Case Keenum and Dougie Mills there. So CJ Stroud is going to be able to be the man, and then he's been on this trajectory all season to put himself as a top 5 quarterback, even some people putting him in the MVP conversation at points. He's had some clutch drives, and I think he leads his team to victory in this game as well here. Give me the Houston Texans. We're going to the playoffs, baby.
Football time in Houston.
And then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Tepperville in Carolina. How many beers will they get poured on them? We don't know yet, but what we do know is that they are 5-point favorites. If they win this game, they will win their division and have a matchup, preferably against the Philadelphia Eagles. Who do you like in this game? And do you think David Tepper will pour a beer on Baker Mayfield if they lose?
Well, anything's possible with this guy. David Pepper's an absolute lunatic. If the Bucks do lose this game, they might potentially be on the worst top 5. They could not lose to the Panthers to miss out on the playoffs. Please, for the love of God, think of the children, okay? I know I'm on my villain arc, but think of the children for a second. Who would you rather see in the playoffs? Taylor Heineke, Derek Carwreck, or Baker Mayfield? Baker Mayfield, great story. We love Baker Mayfield. Please, think of the children. Please, for the love of God. Baker, don't let us down. Bucks win.
Yeah, Bucks better win this game, and it's not going to be potentially on the worst 5. It will be scorched earth on this podcast, and you will have gone 2-15 after that, because if you lose this game, I don't know, Florida might die. Like, Florida might actually fall off the map after this game.
It could be Atlantis at the end of it.
It could be Atlantis at the end of this, and then we're probably going to banish the Buccaneers to Atlantis if you lose this game. So I'll take the Bucks. I think you should win this game 35-13, take some momentum in the playoffs, win going away. And then after this game, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans. They're going to be in Tennessee. They are 5-point favorites. Last time they played Tennessee, it was for the division to make it into the playoffs last year, but they're facing off against Duck Hodges himself, Josh Dobbs, the Passernaut. This game's probably going to be Ryan Tannehill with Will Levis going out of last game with an injury. Do you see any chance where the Titans can upset the Jaguars and play spoiler?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have Mike Vrabel. And I know that Ryan Tannehill hasn't played great this year, but this is the team that is familiar with them and has had success in the past. So I definitely think it's possible. What does it say for the spread there?
The Jags are 5-point favorites, which I think is a little bit too much, especially with how the Jags have played down the spread.
Yeah, with how the Jags have played down the stretch, I'm going to take the Titans to cover. I will pick the Jags to win, however, and solidify that 4 seed.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Titans to win this game. I just have a feeling because they always play the Jaguars tough. They played them tough last game, and especially with how inconsistent Trevor has been, and then they had to bench him last week just so he could recover, and then CJ Beathard ended up playing. Tennessee's defense is no slouch. Jeffrey Simmons still is the man here, and the Titans, I mean, if it's to upset your division rival, that's motivation enough if you're a competitor. And then I do think Mike Vrabel is a slightly better coach, and he's done more with less throughout his career than Doug Peterson, even though he's won a Super Bowl. So give me the Titans in this game to play spoiler at home. 5 points, way too much for me.
Yeah, I agree.
And then after that, we have the Minnesota Vikings as 3-point underdogs heading to Detroit. Vikings are pretty much dead at this point. Do you think they have any chance, or do you think they just roll over?
I don't think they had a chance before last week. And now with them losing to the Cowboys the way they did, I mean, Dan Campbell said that the flame that is with the Lions in this game with the Cowboys is propane to that fire. So if I'm any team who would not want to face the Lions this week, it's the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to absolutely crush them, and the Vikings will be crumbled at that point.
Yeah, I will take the Lions to drop 50 in this game. I think it's going to be similar to how they came out versus the New Orleans Saints, except you legitimately get robbed from the 2 seed, and now you have to face off against the hottest team in football in the LA Rams here. So give me the Detroit Lions in this game, wrapping up that number 3 seed with the potential to get that 2 seed if the Cowboys falter on the road, which is not abnormal for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we have the New York Jets versus the New England Patriots. The Jets are coming in as 2.5 point underdogs versus Bailey Zappi, probably because they have Trevor Siemian instead of Joe Flacco at quarterback here. But I will take the Patriots in this game. I just think at home in Gillette, Jets aren't very good on the road.
Jets aren't very good at their own. Bill Belichick has this circled on his calendar for some odd reason, even though he left them one day after joining them. He has some sort of animosity, even though he's the one that's the problem. I won't make the Taylor Swift joke, but it's right there for me. Patriots win this game, ruin their standings here because they clearly don't care about Jaden Daniels.
And then after that, so the Patriots are not out of the realm of possibility of blowing a pick. We saw that when they lost or when they blew home field advantage versus the New York Jets and letting the Jets win that game there. But then we have the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. And in this game, the Bengals have been eliminated from the playoffs. However, you are playing your big brother in the division, and it always is a competitive game. And then Kevin Stefanski said, we will do what we need to do to prepare for week 1 of the playoffs, and we'll probably rest some players here and get healthy. Any chance the Bengals win this game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with them potentially resting starters, I think especially their defense is probably who they're going to want to rest up the most.
Yeah.
So I think the Bengals can definitely still win. Jake Browning, he didn't play terrible against the Chiefs either. So anything's possible, and it's in Cincinnati. I'll take the Bengals, actually.
Yeah, I'll take the Bengals in this game. Rest Myles Garrett. I think he's someone who's not going to come out flat if you give him a week off. I think that'll only benefit him, especially when he'll be able to either go after Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud here. So Bengals as 6-point favorites here. Give me the Bengals, but I think the Browns cover.
Yeah, okay.
And then we have the most interesting game of the week. I know I'm excited for it, you're excited for it, and you're excited for it. We have the Falcons on the road, which they're terrible after losing to the Bears as 3-point underdogs versus the Saints. Yay.
Yeah,
I hate
that's
both
awesome.
I hate both of these teams.
I hope both teams get hit by a car.
I know
Derek Carr.
both of these teams were given the opportunity to talk to Lamar Jackson at least, and they both said, nah, I want Derek Carr. Nah, I want Desmond Ritter or Taylor Heineke. You look nice. Not Lamar Jackson, though. No, definitely not the MVP.
Not the MVP of the league.
Not the MVP of the league. Not once, but twice. Potential Super Bowl appearance. Nope. So both these teams deserve to lose in this game. And honestly, I hope they tie.
Yeah, let's root for a tie. I'm actually going to hop on that tie train as well.
And then we have the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to face off against the Giants. Last time they played, it was oddly close. The Eagles, 5-point favorites in this game, which I totally disagree with. And I actually think the New York Football Giants will graduate from the East Rutherford, New Jersey Giants and become the New York Giants once again and beat the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, they played 2 weeks ago and it was oddly close. This is their only win the last 6 weeks. I think they're due for a loss here. Give me the Giants as well.
Yeah, we'll take the Giants because of Bobby Okereke. It's not Okereke, Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth. Just watch Pat McAfee introducing him at the draft and anyone talking about him while he was on the Indianapolis Colts. Absolutely ridiculous. Do your research. And then we have the Chicago Bears on the road with the chance to play spoiler. We talked about earlier in the podcast how the Lions played spoiler last year. They ended up taking off like a crypto chart going all the way to the moon this season. And then we have the Chicago Bears with 2 first-round draft picks and locked into that number 1 pick. So they got nothing to lose. Justin Fields potentially auditioning for a job. And then the Packers are 3-point favorites, which is basically Vegas telling you, we don't know, because they give you a 3-point push just for being at home. I have the Chicago Bears in this game. I think they play spoiler again for the Green Bay Packers this season.
Well, what am I considered on this show to many people? A visionary. And what can I envision now? We look to the future, Sunday after this game has resided. 2023, lose to the Lions to miss out on the playoffs. 2024, Bears beat the Packers. They miss out on the playoffs. I see history strikes again. We are history buffs on this show. So I'm actually going to pick the Bears to win as well.
Okay, so Bears win, upset the Packers, but if Seattle loses, that's okay. If Minnesota loses, that's okay, but they need both of those teams to lose. So Packers, you better show up in this game and beat the Chicago Bears, which you own, but with Cole Kmet as that cornerstone, you never know what can happen. And
He
then
is
we
a luxury.
have the LA Rams on the road versus the San Francisco 49ers. They are only 3-point underdogs in San Francisco, so another game where it's pretty much a toss-up here. This game really means nothing to the San Francisco 49ers except for Kyle Shanahan continuing to be Sean McVay's daddy, but I actually think the Rams win this game because I think it'll be a closer game than most people expect. Like the first one, Rams take some momentum into the playoffs, and then Niners start to pull their starters in the second half.
Yeah, so we're not going to see Christian McCaffrey in this game. He's going to sit out this game. I think this is a game, we've talked about the MVP race a lot. How much is it going to mean when Christian McCaffrey's not there? Is it going to affect their offense significantly? Rams are one of the hottest teams. They have more to play for. They already have that one seed secured. Give me the Rams in this game as well.
Okay. Both have the Rams in that game. And then we move on to the Dallas Cowboys coming off of their third straight loss in Dallas versus the Detroit Lions, where the refs said they won the game, but they didn't actually win the game. And then they are going to Washington. They are 13-point favorites, even though they can't score points on the road versus the Washington Commanders in Washington. I think 13 points is way too much for a team that averages 20 points on the road. I still think they win this game, but it's only by a touchdown.
Yeah, I like that same bet as well. Give me the Commanders. I'm going to fade the public here. Give me the Commanders to cover. And the Cowboys will win this game, but ultimately, I think the Commanders will cover.
All right, so we both have the Commanders covering in that game, and then the Kansas City Chiefs are heading to LA to take on Easton. Stick it up your ass, and they are 3-point underdogs in this game, probably because Patrick Mahomes will not play in this game. Give me, I don't know, who cares?
Yeah, does it matter?
Does this game actually matter? The Chiefs are locked in. The Chargers would benefit from losing this game, but I think this is a game where the Chargers fuck around and lose, and then a generational player will be taking exactly the pick before that they lost out on because they won this game. So Chargers are going to Charger.
Chargers are going to Charger, and I don't care who wins this game.
All right. Then we have the Denver Broncos taking their Mafia down to Las Vegas here. Maybe they're going to raid some casinos. Maybe we'll see the Robert De Niro casino movie that Martin Scorsese directed. Instead of Robert De Niro, we're going to see Sean Payton in that role in this movie, but he's going up against the other competing boss in Antonio Pierce, who I think would probably wreck him. So we have the Raiders versus the Broncos. Give me the Raiders as 2.5-point favorites at home in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Punk this team. I mean, you're starting Jared Stidham. You did Russell Wilson dirty. And the Broncos, they're mob bosses, but they're like the Pistol Pete mob bosses of the East. Where the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, looks like if I sneezed at him the wrong way, he would knock me out. So give me the Raiders. I think the Raiders win this game. Plus, they've been playing good football.
Yeah, it was like when Young Thug and Gunna started to start a game and then didn't work out.
Yeah.
Then we have Seattle here as 2.5-point underdogs. They are 2.5-point favorites. They're going to Scottsdale, Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Cardinals coming off a big victory versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Seattle just lost at home to the Pittsburgh Steelers for Mike Tomlin to clinch his consecutive winning season for 17 straight years. Do you see the Arizona Cardinals playing some upset ball to the Seattle Seahawks, or do you think Seattle sees that Bears matchup as a prime opportunity to seize the 7th seed?
Yeah, I think the Seahawks win this game. I think it'll be close because they historically play close, but I think the Cardinals want to lose and the Seahawks want to win. So therefore, I think the Seahawks will pull it out. Plus, I don't know who's going to guard DK Metcalf either.
Yeah, no one on that team's going to guard DK Metcalf. Give me the Seattle Seahawks in that game. I think they'll see that first round matchup where we both have the Bears winning. And if the Bears win that game, the Seattle Seahawks will be extra motivated to come out there and beat the Cardinals. So give me the Seahawks as well here, and I'll take them to cover. Then we have the matchup of the week outside of the Texans and the Colts, Sunday Night Football. Yeah, I've been waiting all day for a Sunday night. Just as Carrie Underwood said, we have the Buffalo Bills as 3-point favorites in Miami, taking on Tua, taking on the Dolphins, who can't beat a winning team. Do you see them changing that fate here, or do you see Buffalo prevailing, maybe with a little bit of assistance?
Well, definitely assistance here. I think the Bills will cover, and I actually think that they're going to take care of business against them. I see something like a 34-24 kind of game. I think the Bills know their fate, and they know what they got to do. Do I trust Josh Allen more than Tua? Absolutely. So I'm going to take the Bills to win this game, and I do think they cover pretty easily.
Yeah, the thing is, like, it's Josh Allen versus Tua, and then Tua is not very good with adversity. We saw that in the Baltimore Ravens game. Looks like he got really in his head. He was flustered in that game. It's like Tyreek Hill. How much can he do in this game to win it? But I would take experience in this one. And the Bills, ever since Sean McDermott has announced that he supports Al Qaeda, have been undefeated. So his 9/11 speech is making an impact there. So I think Sean McDermott, since we're in Florida, we're in that kind of southern region, he's going to be like, we need to be like the Bombers on Pearl Harbor in this game. And we go to Miami and win. Another incredible motivational speech from Sean McDermott.
Absolutely. Really, really tears my heart apart a little bit. So
Yeah.
Buffalo Bombs get the win against the Dolphins.
The Buffalo Bomber. Honestly, yeah. Switch their name to the Buffalo Bombers, especially after that speech. But Buffalo Bills get the win. But this is going to be an incredible matchup, and we'll probably be wrong with some of those games. We're going to see a lot of surprises. So I am hyped out of my mind for this week, but it's kind of bittersweet, though, because this is the last week of regular season football. It kind of
Yeah.
the mild depression set on me last week when I realized there's only one more week of football. There's only one more week of Scott Hansen being hyped up on Adderall on Red Zone. It's kind of tough.
Yeah. And then we go into Super Wildcard weekend, and the NFL teams slowly cave in until eventually on February 13th, we see the two final people standing. So we only got about a month left of football, and then we got what feels like 10 years before the next season.
Yeah, we feel like 10 years before the season. Then we have to wait about a month or month and a half for the NBA playoffs. Then we'll have some interesting basketball there. But as soon as the NFL ends, that's usually when the NBA starts to pick it up. Hopefully, there's some interesting drama at the NBA trade deadline. Who knows? Maybe James Harden will get traded again.
Yeah, maybe. Or Kevin Durant's unhappy in Phoenix, so we'll see how that pans out.
Is he?
Yep.
Oh, come on. No, you can't be serious.
No, seriously. Yeah, he reports he's unhappy.
Come on. Like Kevin Durant, are you kidding me? So this guy goes from Golden State, where he has Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, who's one of the best coaches in basketball, and Klay Thompson, and just Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are enough to win a champion. And then he's like, you know what? I want to do it on my own. And then he goes to Brooklyn, pairs up with Kyrie Irving, who just had an absolute disaster in Cleveland, and then Boston after that. And then he wants to trade for Ben Simmons, and then they trade Ben Simmons for James Harden there, and then he wants to get his coach fired because he doesn't want to start DeAndre Jordan. And then once he has some adversity where he's realizing he can't build a team, and James Harden and Kyrie Irving both wanted out of Brooklyn, he's like, let me go to Phoenix with Devin Booker, who just had an incredible run in the playoffs and made it to the NBA Finals. And you're telling me he wants to leave another team? Like, when people say, like, the old generation, like, oh, everyone asks for a trade right now, like, Kevin Durant being unhappy in Phoenix is absolutely ridiculous. It's like what LeBron does. He does it in free agency. He doesn't make teams go out there and trade for him, so you don't have to trade away all your assets. Like Kevin Durant, it seems like it's just impulsive and at this point, and it seems like it's not well thought out. He doesn't have a strategic plan. Say what you will about LeBron. LeBron actually thinks these things through before he actually makes a move.
The funny part is the reason why he's unhappy in Phoenix is because of the unavailability of Bradley Beal and because of how hollow their roster is because of it.
He wanted Bradley Beal. Like, you wanted
And
this.
also, Bradley Beal, think about the last 3 or 4 seasons with Bradley Beal. He's been perpetually hurt the last 4 years. You knew what you were getting yourself into. And then why is your roster hollow? I don't know. You have 3 players who are making $40 million. So of course you're not going to have any salary cap. That's why you're going to have players like Bobo and Cameron Payne and all these other guys here because you don't have any money at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, like these super teams like really don't work for the most part. Golden State was an exception, but you left Golden State where you could have won 2 more championships and had 4 rings, but you couldn't get your own ego out of the way. But you destroyed your legacy by leaving Golden State and then winning a championship without you because people thought you saved Steph Curry's legacy when you went there. And then Steph Curry was like, no, I'm the man. I'm going to go out there, beat Boston, and make that series not even look particularly close because the first game, Boston rains in a bunch of threes, and then Steph kind of just toys with them the rest of the series. And then Boston, oh, what'd they do to you? Oh, yeah, they swept you in that same run.
Yeah.
You got swept, and you also had Kyrie Irving on that team. I get James Harden was limping, but you got swept by Jason Tatum, who goes ice cold in random nights. You got swept by Jaylen Brown, who still can't go left.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah. No. And honestly, the same person who gets a lot of shit, James Harden, how he always wants to get traded. James Harden does it in a comical way where he just doesn't go to the gym, gains like 30 pounds, gives up. He's like, no, I'm going to be traded.
James
Kevin Durant is just
yeah.
whiny about it at this point.
Yeah, James Harden's like actually funny though. James Harden's like actually like a really funny NBA player because it's like kind of cartoonish, but like the dude knows who he is and he's fine with that. Kevin Durant, he seems like whiny and he's a little bit touchy with the media. James Harden's like, oh, I made $200 million and I blew 100K at the club. I really don't care. I'm partying with Lil Baby.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's ridiculous. He's because like I saw Kendrick Perkins like post about it. He's like Kevin Durant like best trade options, and I'm like, no, you can't be serious. That's funny. And then you say that, and then he's actually not happy because I saw a report that LeBron wants to trade for Kevin Durant, but it's like you would trade Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, and then you trade all your depth again. Anthony Davis is perpetually hurt. Then it'd just be you and LeBron. And who on that team is playing defense unless AD is healthy?
yeah. No,
That's
it's
ridiculous.
No, it's completely ridiculous. I think he deserves a worse reputation than James Harden currently.
Yeah, he does because if James Harden went to the Warriors, you think he's winning 2 chips? Absolutely. Definitely.
Ridiculous. But we have been previewed for the final week of the NFL season. We also got to bully the Pistons a little bit, and we got to bully Kevin Durant. So
it was a good time.
We are good bullies, the Brickyard bullies as we are. You have been previewed, and we will see you next week.
Stay brick.